if 1 mole of sulfuric acid reacts with 2 moles of sodium hydroxide, according to this balance equation, which is the limiting reactant. So there are 2 reactants. One of them is the limiting reactant. The other one, in this case, is the excess reactant. Okay. For many chemistry questions, there are normally more than one way to solve them. So this question, there are actually 2 to 3 ways to solve it. And now I'm going to talk about it. So the first solution, we just go with stoichiometry. 1 mole of sulfuric acid requires 2 moles of sodium hydroxide to complete this reaction stoichiometrically. But now we do have 1 mole of sulfuric acid, but we don't have 2 moles of sodium hydroxide. We only have 1 mole. We are short of sodium hydroxide. So therefore, sodium hydroxide is the reactant that limits this reaction. It does not have enough. It does not have the required 1. So therefore, sodium hydroxide is the limiting reactant. That's solution number 1, I can say. Then sometimes my students told me, oh, I'm confused. So therefore, probably it's a good idea to show some numbers. Okay, this actually, the second one I'm talking about actually is the same as what I just explained. If I call what I just explained as a solution 1, then I will call this one solution 2, but they are really the same solution. Okay, instead of just speaking or explaining verbally, I want to show some numbers. We start with what we know. Okay, so for example, we know 1 mole of sulfuric acid. We start from there. So now we convert from moles of sulfuric acid to moles of sodium hydroxide, moles A to moles B, using the coefficients in the balance equation as a conversion factor. Okay, so this gives us 2 moles of sodium hydroxide. In other words, 1 mole of sulfuric acid requires 2 moles of sodium hydroxide to complete this reaction. And since there is only 1 mole of sodium hydroxide available, and that is less than the required 2 moles of sodium hydroxide, therefore sodium hydroxide has to be the limiting reactant. Okay? So that's a solution 1 and solution 2, basically just one solution. Okay? So now the next solution. This is the kind of traditional solution, okay, or the solution people use most oftenly. Start with what we know. We know 1 mole of sulfuric acid. We convert this quantity to one of the products. So here I would like to convert that to water. So therefore 1 mole of sulfuric acid converting 2 moles of water using the coefficient in the balance equation. The coefficient for sulfuric acid is 1, and that's why I have 1 here. And then for water, that's 2. So therefore, this gives 2 moles of water. What does it mean? It means 1 mole of sulfuric acid produces 2 moles of water, provided if you have enough, the other reactant. Okay? So in this case, if we have enough sodium hydroxide, then 1 mole of sulfuric acid can produce 2 moles of water. But there is another quantity we know, or is given. Let's look at that one. 1 mole of sodium hydroxide, we convert that to the same product. Okay, so therefore converting from moles of sodium hydroxide to moles of water, just like what we did for sulfuric acid. Use the coefficient in the balance equation here in this conversion factor. And now that is equivalent to 1 mole of water. What does it mean? It means, if we look at both calculations here, 1 mole sulfuric acid, provided if there is enough sodium hydroxide, it will produce 2 moles of water. And for 1 mole of sodium hydroxide, that's also what is given. Reacting with excess or more than enough of sodium sulfuric acid, that would produce 1 mole of water. Okay, so obviously 1 mole of water, that quantity is smaller than the 2 mole of water. So, which means reactant A can produce 2 moles of water, but reactant B only produces 1 mole of water. It means once 1 mole of water, that product is reached, this reactant is gone. No more sodium hydroxide available. And this one still would have 0.5 moles. All right? So whatever used up first is the limiting reactant. So therefore sodium hydroxide has to be the limiting reactant. Okay? So all 3 solutions having the same result. But solution 1, what I talked about verbally, I didn't do any calculation, but get the job done. Then solution 2, you do 1 step, just 1 calculation, you get the job done. Solution 3, that's the most commonly used solution. So all 3 solutions tell us the same result. Sodium hydroxide is the limiting reactant because that reactant is used up first under the conditions given in this question.